Okay, so I wanted to start with just a very quick little primer on YA literature for those of you who might not be entirely clear on all the lingo. YA means young adult literature. It is the hottest market in publishing right now, probably due to the success of mega hits like Twilight and Hunger Games. If you haven't read those books, you might have seen the movies that they're based on. But aside from these really big blockbuster hits, the YA market is full of really fantastic literature by many, many different writers. And I think that the reason it's such a popular market is because there's so much energy and vitality to the writing in the genre. And we're going to be talking today about some of the key elements that make this make YA literature so vital and energetic. Okay, so what is YA? Nuts and bolts. The primary demographic is readers between 12 and 18 years old. Some would even say 14 and 18. So that means that the main characters and the point of view, POV's point of view, in YA literature are generally between the ages of 12 and 18. And this is true even though many, many adults are now reading young adult literature. The core audience is still teenagers, and I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind. Even if the writing is told retrospectively or in the third person, the insights and worldview should still really grow out of the narrator's teen perspective. And that's something we're going to talk a little bit more about later in the tutorial. The Atlantic Wire, which is a great blog outpost of the Atlantic Monthly magazine, has a fantastic YA for Grown-Ups series. And they have a summary and history of YA on that part of the site, which you can look up. It's called What Does YA Mean? And I've supplied a little quote from it, and I think it would be useful for everyone to keep in mind. One thing YA is not is a genre. It's a category. As with adult literature, it contains all sorts of types of writing, from fiction to nonfiction. As Tracy Von Straten, VP at Scholastic, reminded us, something people tend to forget is that YA is a category, not a genre. And within it is every possible genre: fantasy, sci-fi, contemporary, nonfiction. There's so much richness within the category. So I think that that's an important thing to keep in mind when we talk about YA. The other quote about YA that I really like is by the publisher Flux. And they say, where young adult is a point of view, not a reading level. And I love that because it shows that the writing in the YA category can be ambitious and even difficult and still be YA, as long as the perspective is authentically teen. Okay. So, the bottom line is writers want in on this market. Even adult lit writers are writing YA these days. Francine Prose has written several YA books. Nick Hornby's written at least one. Sherman Alexie wrote one that won the National Book Award for Young People's Literature a few years ago. And as YA becomes a more recognized and respected category in the publishing industry, it's becoming more and more like other established categories from a career building standpoint. So that means that the kind of opportunities that were once available only to adult lit writers are now available to YA writers. And one significant career building opportunity is publishing short stories, essays, and poetry. Which brings me to my question that I've asked you in this slide. How can a writer distinguish himself within the YA marketplace? Since it's being flooded with blockbuster hits and adult literature writers who are writing YA, how can you stand out? Well, I think one way to stand out is to actually take a page from the world of adult lit and publish short works of fiction, essays, and poetry. Writers in every category of adult literature for generations have published short stories as well as novels. Think about Ernest Hemingway, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Nell Freudenberger, Don DeLillo, Steve Almond. They all started their careers by writing short fiction and essays, and they've all of those writers also continued to write short pieces of fiction and nonfiction and even poetry all throughout their careers. Stephen King, in his own writing memoir on writing, said that he got his start publishing short stories in journals that specialized in mystery and horror writing. So, the question you might be asking yourself is why? Why did these writers bother with the short pieces when they could have been working on their novels? Well, so here's what adult literature writers know about publishing short pieces before that they've published a novel. Publishing short pieces makes you visible to your audience. Before you published a novel, your future audience of book-buying strangers doesn't know who you are yet, but they can discover you by picking up a literary journal or a magazine that publishes short fiction, and they'll see your name and they'll remember it. It also builds the kind of publishing credits that book editors and agents respect, and I think that's really critical. When it comes time for you to find your agent, and when it's time for your agent to sell your book, it really shows something if you can say that you were published in X, Y, and Z literary journal. It also establishes you as a writer and a brand. So, I'm Stephen King, and I'm a horror writer, or I'm Jhumpa Lahiri, and I write about the Indian diaspora. And I think that that's also something that everyone should be thinking about their writing career, is establishing themselves as a brand and the kind of writer that they are. And all of this helps you establish your writing career. And even though this is the last note on this slide, it is certainly not the least important. Publishing short pieces, writing and publishing short pieces, makes you a better writer overall. Learning to write short stories and poetry teaches a novelist a great deal about economy, and I can say that from experience on both sides of the publishing equation as both an editor and a writer. So, dedicating some time to writing short pieces will make you a better and more flexible writer overall. So, things that adult literature writers also know about publishing short pieces after a first novel and between novels over the course of a career is that continuing to publish short pieces keeps you visible to your loyal audience, but it also expands your audience between books. So, let's say, a reader who picked up your first novel might forget about you by the time your second novel comes out, unless they happen to see that you wrote a short story that was published in a journal that they read online.